the Instagram notification changed everything. Isabella Hartman, 32-year-old CEO of Hartman Media Group, posted her first photo in 9 months. The image showed her holding a newborn baby boy. The caption was cryptic. "You came from a night I thought I'd forget. But I never will." 700 miles away in Texas, Ethan Ford was eating lunch at his auto repair shop when the post appeared. His sandwich fell from his hand. The baby's face looked exactly like his own baby photos. With trembling fingers, he typed 4 words, "Is this my child?" Isabella Hartman was everything corporate America feared and admired. Daughter of real estate mogul Jonathan Hartman, she'd grown up on Long Island, attending charity galas before she could pronounce philanthropy properly. Her father believed women could be wives or secretaries, never leaders. Isabella spent her life proving him wrong. Harvard Business School admitted her at 23. While classmates celebrated graduation backpacking through Europe, Isabella launched her first startup from a Queens studio apartment. The media blog failed within 18 months, but she learned more from failure than any classroom taught. Her second venture, a digital marketing firm, caught investors' attention. By 28, she'd acquired 3 smaller companies. By 30, she controlled Hartman Media Group, worth $800 million. The business press called her the Ice Queen. She gave interviews about disrupting traditional family structures, arguing modern women didn't need marriage to be complete. Her Upper East Side penthouse, featured in Architectural Digest, showed clean lines and monochrome palettes, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The only personal touch was a single photograph of her late mother, hidden in her office. Ethan Ford's story was different. He'd grown up in small-town Texas, son of a mechanic and teacher. His brilliance with machines earned him a full scholarship to Texas A&M, where he graduated summa cum laude in mechanical engineering. Companies courted him with 6-figure offers, but Ethan chose love over ambition. He married Sarah, his college sweetheart, the week after graduation. They bought a Houston house with a big backyard, planning for the large family they wanted. Emma arrived when they were 29. Ethan took a stable engineering job, with predictable hours to be home for bedtime stories. 2 years ago, a drunk driver changed everything. Sarah was returning from book club, less than a mile from home. The other driver walked away uninjured. Sarah was pronounced dead at the scene. Ethan quit his engineering job, unable to focus on blueprints, when Emma woke screaming for her mother. His brother owned an Austin auto repair shop and offered him work. The Houston house was sold, too full of Sarah's ghost. The Austin house was smaller, but had the same big backyard with Emma's swing set. His days developed rhythm. Morning cartoons with Emma, work at the shop, dinner at 5:30, bath time, story time, then sitting alone wondering if this was all there'd be. 9 months ago, on Sarah's death anniversary, Ethan drove to Houston to visit her grave. He told her about Emma starting kindergarten, about the tooth she'd lost. He apologized for still being angry, for being half the parent Emma deserved. That night, he found himself in a hotel bar near the airport, avoiding his silent room. The bar was nearly empty. Then Isabella walked in, just finished with the most humiliating meeting of her career. Morrison Industries killed her 2-year acquisition project in 10 minutes. The board said they didn't trust an unmarried woman without children to understand their family-focused brand. She ordered whiskey neat. He had beer. They sat 3 seats apart until she laughed bitterly at her phone. He asked if she was okay. They talked for hours without exchanging last names. She worked in media, he fixed things. They talked about loss, expectations, loneliness. They moved to a corner booth. Her hand touched his. By midnight, they were in her hotel room, not for typical reasons, but for connection neither expected. Morning brought awkwardness without regret. They exchanged Instagram handles instead of phone numbers. A modern gesture, meaning everything and nothing. Then she flew to New York. He drove to Austin. That should have been the end. 3 weeks later, Isabella stared at a positive pregnancy test. She was on birth control. They'd used protection, but 1% possible became her reality. She scheduled a discreet clinic appointment, printed forms. But the ultrasound heartbeat changed everything. She left with crumpled forms and a decision. She would have this baby alone. The conference room at Hartman Media Group stretched across the 40th floor, windows commanding Manhattan views. Isabella sat reviewing quarterly reports, Oliver sleeping in his bassinet beside her. 3 weeks old, he'd already attended 4 board meetings. Board members said nothing but whispered speculation about the father's identity filled the hallways. Marcus, her assistant for 5 years, knocked with unusual hesitation. "Miss Hartman, there's a gentleman in the lobby." "Ethan Ford. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's quite insistent. He asked me to give you this." The note was simple. "We only met once, but I have a feeling." Isabella's carefully maintained composure cracked. She'd seen his Instagram message 2 days ago but hadn't responded, hoping he'd assume coincidence. But he was here, in her building, 14 floors below. "Send him up," she said, surprised by her steady voice. "Should I call security to stand by?" Marcus asked. "No, just give us privacy." Ethan emerged from the elevator looking exactly as she remembered, yet completely different. The hotel bar stranger had worn sorrow like a coat. This man wore determination like armor. His clothes were simple. Jeans, blue button-down, boots that had seen actual work. He looked utterly out of place in her corporate palace, and somehow that made him more real than anything else in the room. "Hello, Isabella," he said quietly. "How did you find me?" she asked, though the answer was obvious. "Your company isn't exactly hidden." His eyes moved to the bassinet. "May I?" "I didn't ask you to come here," Isabella said, her CEO voice sharp and cold. "I'm perfectly capable of handling this situation alone." "Situation?" Ethan moved closer to the bassinet. "Is that what he is?" "His name is Oliver." The admission felt like surrender. Oliver James Hartman. 3 weeks, and 2 days old. 7 pounds. 4 ounces at birth. Perfect health. Ethan stood over the bassinet, hands gripping the rail. Oliver slept peacefully, unaware of the tension above him. "He looks like Emma did," Ethan said softly. "Same nose. Same chin." He looked up at Isabella. "Same father. You don't know that conclusively." "Don't I?" Ethan straightened. 9 months ago, Houston, a hotel bar. A night that meant something, even if we pretended it didn't. And now a baby, who has my eyes and your stubbornness, apparently. Oliver chose that moment to wake, his face scrunching in the pre-cry expression Isabella had come to dread. Nothing seemed to soothe him when he got like this. She'd tried everything. Feeding. Changing. Rocking. The expensive baby nurse had declared him colicky. Her mother had suggested formula instead of breastfeeding. Everyone had opinions. But Oliver just cried. Without asking permission, Ethan lifted Oliver from the bassinet. He settled the baby against his shoulder, one large hand supporting the tiny head, the other patting a gentle rhythm on the small back. He swayed slightly, a movement so natural it seemed unconscious. Oliver's cries stuttered, stopped, became soft snuffles against Ethan's shirt. "How?" Isabella whispered. "Emma was the same," Ethan replied, still swaying. "She needed to feel a heartbeat, needed to know someone was there. Babies understand presence more than words." Isabella watched them. Her son, content for the first time in days. And this man who'd driven across multiple states on a hunch. And an Instagram photo. Her carefully constructed walls didn't just crack, they crumbled. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Cancel it." "I don't cancel meetings." "You do today." Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. "We need to talk, really talk. And not in your office where you can hide behind that desk and your title. Oliver deserves better than a business negotiation." Isabella found herself calling Marcus, postponing her afternoon schedule. She gathered Oliver's diaper bag, designer leather that cost more than most people's rent, but held the same supplies as any other parent's bag. They rode the elevator in silence, Oliver still peaceful against Ethan's shoulder. "Where are we going?" Isabella asked as they reached the lobby. "Your place," Ethan said, "where Oliver lives." where you can't pretend this is just a professional complication. The drive to her penthouse was surreal. Ethan holding Oliver in the back of her town car, while she gave directions to her driver. The doorman's raised eyebrow at her companion. The elevator ride to the top floor, watching their reflection. They looked like a family, and the image terrified her. Isabella's penthouse occupied 2 floors overlooking Central Park. The space was immaculate. White marble, black leather, abstract art, worth more than most homes. 20-foot ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, a kitchen that had never seen actual cooking until Oliver's bottles needed sterilizing. The nursery corner looked almost comical amid the monochrome sophistication. A small island of color and chaos in her controlled world. "This is where you live," Ethan said. It wasn't a question. "This is where I succeed," Isabella corrected, then caught herself. "Sorry." "That sounded honest," Ethan finished. "It sounded honest." He looked around, still holding Oliver. "Where do you live, Isabella? Where do you sit at 3 in the morning when he won't stop crying? Where do you eat breakfast? Where do you exist when you're not being the CEO?" Isabella wanted to give a sharp response, but the truth was she didn't know. These past 3 weeks had been about survival, not living. She'd held Oliver in the nursery chair her designer had selected for aesthetics rather than comfort. She'd eaten whatever Marcus brought her. She'd existed in a haze of feedings and meetings, and a crushing fear that she'd made a terrible mistake. "Sit," Ethan said gently, guiding her to her own couch. "You look exhausted." "I'm fine." "You're not. And that's okay." He adjusted Oliver, who was now awake but content, staring up at his father with unfocused eyes. "Tell me about the pregnancy." "What's to tell?" "I found out at 3 weeks. I threw up every morning for 4 months. I hid it until 7 months, when the board forced me to explain my weight gain. I worked until the day I went into labor. Alone," Ethan added softly. "By choice. Was it?" He shifted to face her more directly. "Or was it because you thought I wouldn't want to know? Because you assumed I'd see Oliver as a burden, a complication, a situation?" Isabella felt tears threatening, which infuriated her. She didn't cry. CEOs didn't cry. You had Emma. You had your life in Texas. You had Sarah's memory. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, remember that night we used each other to forget our pain? Well, surprise, there are consequences." "We didn't use each other," Ethan said firmly. "Don't diminish what happened. We connected. We saw each other. Really saw each other. And we created this incredible little person." He looked down at Oliver. "You should have told me. So you could what? Resent me? Resent him? Pay child support you can't afford while missing time with Emma?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, crossing to the windows that overlooked Central Park. "Sarah and I tried for 2 years to have another baby. After Emma. 2 years of tests and treatments and hope and disappointment. The doctors never found anything wrong with either of us. It just didn't happen. She died, thinking she'd failed me somehow. No matter how many times I told her Emma was enough, she was enough." He turned back to Isabella. "And then you messaged me after 9 months of silence with a photo of a baby who looks like my father, like Emma, like every Ford man for generations. You think I'd resent him? Isabella." "He's a miracle." Isabella stood, crossing to stand beside him. They watched the city below, Oliver drowsy between them. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed too beautiful for the conversation they needed to have. "I drew up papers," Isabella said quietly. "Full relinquishment of parental rights. No obligations, financial or otherwise. Oliver would have my name, my resources, my protection. You could return to Texas and—" "No." The word was sharp, final. "You haven't seen the papers." "I don't need to." Ethan shifted Oliver to one arm, using his free hand to turn Isabella to face him. "I will never sign away my son. Not for money. Not for simplicity. Not for anything. Oliver has a father. Emma has a brother. Those are facts, not negotiables." Isabella pulled away, pacing to her desk where the papers waited in a leather folder. She picked them up, holding them between them. My father will destroy you. The media will crucify you. Emma will be dragged into this circus. Is that what you want for her? What I want, Ethan said slowly, is for my children, both of them, to know they were loved, wanted, fought for. Emma lost her mother. Oliver shouldn't have to lose his father too. Not when I'm standing right here. Isabella watched him hold their son with such natural ease it made her chest ache. 3 weeks of struggling with every aspect of motherhood, and Ethan had walked in and made it look effortless. I don't know how to do this, she admitted, the words barely audible. Do what? Share control. Let someone else make decisions. Trust. The last word came out broken. Ethan crossed to her, Oliver secure against his chest. Then we learn. Together. For him. He nodded toward Oliver. He deserves parents who can at least try. Isabella looked at the papers in her hands. 3 hours of billable legal work reduced to meaning nothing. She walked to her desk, fed them into the shredder, watching them become confetti. When she turned back, Ethan was smiling slightly. That was dramatic, he said. I'm a CEO. Everything I do is dramatic. But she was almost smiling too. Oliver started to fuss, the hungry cry Isabella had learned to recognize. She reached for him, and Ethan transferred him carefully. As she settled into the uncomfortable designer chair to nurse, Ethan surprised her by adjusting pillows behind her back without being asked. Better? Better, she admitted. As Oliver nursed, Ethan explored the nursery corner, examining the high-end baby items with amusement. This changing table costs more than my mortgage payment, he observed. It's Italian. Oliver doesn't care if it's Italian or IKEA. He just needs it to be functional. He picked up a stuffed giraffe that still had its $800 price tag attached. Isabella, this is insane. I wanted him to have the best. The best isn't about price tags. Ethan sat on the floor near her chair, looking up at her. The best is time, attention, presence. The best is knowing both your parents wanted you enough to figure out the impossible. The memory of Houston surfaced as Isabella nursed Oliver. In the hotel bar, after they'd moved to the booth, Ethan had asked her something no one had asked in years. What did you want to be when you were little? Before the world told you what you should be? She'd laughed, caught off guard. A marine biologist. I loved dolphins. Had every book, every documentary. I was going to save the oceans. She'd taken another sip of whiskey. You? Astronaut, obviously. Then a chef. Then a professional skateboarder. He'd smiled at the memory. Sarah used to say, I never really grew out of any of them. I was always looking at the stars, cooking experiments, trying tricks I was too old for. What happened to those dreams? Isabella had asked. Life, he'd said simply. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the dreams we end up living are better than the ones we started with. Do you really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what was it all for? They'd talked about reinvention then. About how many times a person could become someone new before losing themselves entirely. Isabella had confessed she sometimes didn't recognize herself in mirrors, the CEO staring back where a girl who loved dolphins used to be. Ethan had admitted that some mornings he forgot Sarah was gone, reached for her, and had to remember all over again. The forgetting is the cruelest part, he'd said. Those few seconds of peace before reality crashes back. Or the kindest, Isabella had suggested. Those few seconds where everything is still possible. At some point, Isabella had taken off her heels, tucking her feet under her in the booth. At another, Ethan had ordered coffee to replace their abandoned drinks. The bar had become their world, safe from tomorrow's responsibilities. Can I tell you something terrible? Isabella had asked, as the clock approached midnight. Anything. Sometimes I'm grateful my mother died before she could see what I became. She wanted me to be happy. I became successful instead. Ethan had been quiet for a moment, then said, Sarah would be proud of me for surviving, but disappointed in how. She believed in living, not just existing. I've been existing for 2 years. Until tonight? Isabella had asked. Hope she didn't understand creeping into her voice. Until tonight, he'd agreed. The confession had hung between them, fragile and important. Then Isabella had done something she'd never done before. She'd leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. Not romantically, but like she was tired of holding herself up. He'd let her. His arm coming around her naturally. We should go, Isabella had said without moving. We should, Ethan had agreed, also staying still. Finally, they'd stood together, gathering coats and phones. In the elevator, Isabella had pressed the button for 12. Then looked at him. I don't. Usually. I never. I know, Ethan had said. Neither do I. Her room had been sterile hotel beige. They'd sat on the bed, still talking. Voices lower now. She'd told him about her first company's failure. The humiliation of admitting defeat to her father. He'd described the moment the doctor had said Sarah was gone. How the words had sounded fake. This can't be anything, Isabella had said to the ceiling after. I know, Ethan had replied. We live in different worlds. I know. After tomorrow, we go back to being strangers. Strangers who know each other's worst truths, Ethan had corrected. That's not nothing. They dozed briefly, then dressed awkwardly as dawn approached. At her door, they'd exchanged Instagram handles with rueful smiles. For the posts we'll never make, Isabella had said. For the connection we'll never use, Ethan had agreed. Except here she was, 9 months later, holding proof that some connections couldn't be severed. 2 days after Ethan's first visit, the story exploded. Billionaire CEO's baby daddy revealed, screamed the tabloids. Someone had photographed Ethan entering her building. Within hours, his entire life was public property. Single father, widower, mechanic. The narrative wrote itself. Opportunistic gold digger, targeting a vulnerable new mother. Ethan called Isabella from Texas. Emma's school asked me not to come to pickup today. Too disruptive. Ethan, I'm so sorry. Also, I'm on unpaid leave from work. My boss says until the media attention dies down, I'm too much of a distraction. Before Isabella could respond, her office door burst open. Jonathan Hartman stood there, face thunderous. Marcus hovered behind him, apologetic but helpless. I have to go, Isabella told Ethan. Your father? My father. Good luck. Jonathan waited until she'd hung up, then closed the door with controlled violence. Explain. There's nothing to explain. I had a baby. Ethan Ford is his father. Ethan Ford, Jonathan repeated slowly, is nobody. A mechanic from Texas, with $30,000 in savings and a mortgage he can barely afford. I had him investigated. Of course you did. Did he know who you were? Was this planned? A seduction to trap you? Isabella actually laughed. Nobody trapped anybody, father. We met in a bar. We didn't exchange last names. It was one night. One night that's now threatening everything you've built. Jonathan moved to the windows, his favorite power position. The board is already asking questions. Stock prices dropped 4% this morning. Your judgment is being questioned. My judgment in my personal life has nothing to do with my ability to run this company. Jonathan turned, expression cold. Everything you do reflects on this company. You knew that when you took the position. He pulled out his phone, showed her a message. Harrison wants an emergency board meeting. They're considering asking you to step down temporarily. They can't. I own 51% of the voting shares. But if they lose confidence, if partners pull out, if investors flee, your 51% won't mean anything. He put his phone away. I can make this go away. How? $5 million to Mr. Ford to sign away rights and disappear. Another $2 million to make the media story go away. You return to work. Oliver gets the Hartman name exclusively, and we never speak of this again. No, Isabella. I said no. She stood, facing her father. Oliver has a father. A good man who drove across the country the moment he suspected he had a son. Who held Oliver. and calmed him when I couldn't, who refused to be bought off or scared away. A man who can offer your son nothing, he can offer him love, stability, a sister, a normal childhood where not everything has a price tag. Jonathan's voice turned cutting. And when the media attention destroys his daughter's childhood, when she's haunted by photographers and bullied by classmates, will his love be enough then? Isabella faltered. She hadn't considered Emma, not really. The little girl who'd lost her mother didn't deserve to lose her privacy too. Jonathan saw her weakness and pressed. I'll make him a better offer. 10 million. Enough to move somewhere new, start fresh with his daughter. He can have other children with someone appropriate. Oliver will have everything. The best schools, the best opportunities, the best life, without the complication of divided custody and a father who can't keep up. That afternoon, a black town car appeared outside Ethan's modest house. The lawyer who emerged looked like he'd stepped from a magazine. Emma was at school. Thankfully, Ethan didn't invite him in. Mr. Hartman is prepared to offer you $10 million, the lawyer said. Simply sign away parental rights to Oliver, and the money is yours. Ethan leaned against his doorframe. Tell Jonathan Hartman that Oliver isn't for sale. Mr. Ford. He could make your life very difficult. Custody battles. Media scrutiny. Your daughter exposed to constant attention. What I want, Ethan said evenly, is for my son to know his father. Everything else is just noise. The lawyer left, but Ethan knew this was far from over. That evening, photos of his house appeared online. Emma's school was named in articles. His brother's shop received threatening calls. The life he'd carefully rebuilt was crumbling. He called Isabella that night after Emma was asleep. Your father visited. Well, his lawyer did. I know. I'm sorry. I tried to stop him. 10 million is a lot of money. Isabella's breath caught. You're considering it? I'm considering Emma. She didn't ask for any of this. The kids at school are already being cruel. Parents whisper at pickup. She knows something's wrong but doesn't understand what. Ethan, I won't sign him away, Ethan said firmly. But maybe we need to think about what's best for everyone. Maybe Oliver would be better with one stable home, instead of being pulled between two worlds. You don't mean that. I don't know what I mean anymore, Ethan admitted. I just know my 5-year-old came home crying because someone's mom said her daddy was trying to steal money from a rich lady. Isabella felt tears falling. This is my fault. All of it. No, it's the world's fault for being cruel. But we still have to live in it. They were quiet for a moment. Then Isabella spoke. Come to New York this weekend. Bring Emma. Let's figure this out together. Away from lawyers and fathers, and anyone else who thinks they know better. The DNA test results arrived at Ethan's house on Thursday morning. Courier delivered. He hadn't ordered them, which meant Jonathan Hartman had. The message was clear. Prove it or lose it. Ethan drove to a local clinic that afternoon, submitted to the swab, paid extra for expedited results. Not because he doubted. Oliver's eyes were mirror images of his own. But because he wanted ammunition. The results came back Saturday morning, just hours before Isabella's arrival. Probability of paternity 99.9%. He didn't make a scene about it. No press release, no lawyers, no public declaration. Instead, he took a photo of the results and texted them to Isabella with a simple message. Thank you for giving me a son. Even when you thought you'd have to do it alone. Isabella was sitting in first class, Oliver sleeping in her arms, when the message arrived. She read it 3 times before the tears came. The flight attendant offered tissues, assuming she was just another overwhelmed new mother. She'd spent 9 months convincing herself she didn't need Ethan, didn't need anyone. She'd hired the best doctors, read every book, prepared for every scenario except this one. The father showing up not with demands or anger but with simple, steadfast presence. He hadn't abandoned her. He'd never known there was someone to abandon. The Austin airport was smaller than she'd expected. Ethan waited at baggage claim, and her breath caught at how different he looked here. More solid, more real than he'd seemed in her Manhattan office. He'd brought Emma, who stood beside him in a pink sundress, holding a sign that read, "Welcome Baby Oliver" in careful kindergarten printing. "I hope it's okay," Ethan said, gesturing to Emma. She insisted on coming. "It's more than okay," Isabella said, surprising herself by meaning it. Emma stepped forward shyly. "Are you Oliver's mommy?" "I am. He's lucky," Emma said solemnly. "Mommies are special. I had one, but she had to go to heaven. Daddy says she watches me from the stars." Isabella's throat tightened. She knelt down, balancing Oliver carefully. "I think she must be very proud of you. You made a beautiful sign." Emma beamed, then looked at Oliver. "He's really small." "Was I that small, Daddy?" "Smaller," Ethan said, ruffling her hair. 6 pounds. 2 ounces of pure trouble. The drive to Ethan's house took 30 minutes through tree-lined streets, so different from Manhattan. Isabella found herself relaxing. Oliver stayed peaceful, and Emma chattered from her booster seat about kindergarten, her best friend Mia, and the puppy she hoped to get for her birthday. The house was exactly what Isabella had expected, and nothing like it at once. Small, yes, but meticulously maintained. The lawn was perfect. The porch had a swing, and wind chimes sang in the breeze. Inside, it was clearly a home where a child lived. Artwork on the refrigerator, toys in a basket by the couch, photos everywhere. But it was also clean, organized, loved. "Emma's room is down the hall," Ethan said, giving a brief tour. "Bathroom's here. My room's at the end, and this," he opened a door to a small guest room, "is where you and Oliver can stay, if you want. There's a hotel nearby, if you'd prefer." "This is perfect," Isabella interrupted. The room held a double bed, a dresser, and Ethan had somehow procured a portable crib. The window looked out on the backyard, where that swing set stood waiting. They spent the afternoon in gentle rhythm. Emma showed Isabella her room, introducing each stuffed animal by name. Oliver woke to eat, and Ethan took Emma outside so Isabella could nurse in peace. Through the window, she watched father and daughter on the swing set, Emma's laughter carrying through the glass, and felt something she couldn't name. That evening, after Emma was in bed, they sat on the porch swing while Oliver slept in his carrier between them. The Texas heat had broken, leaving the air soft and jasmine-scented. "Your father called me yesterday," Ethan said quietly. "Personally this time, not through lawyers." Isabella stiffened. "What did he say?" "That I was destroying your life. That Oliver would be better off without a father than with one like me. That you'd built an empire, and I was going to bring it crashing down." "Ethan, he's not wrong about some of it," Ethan continued. "I can't give Oliver what you can. Private schools, trust funds, connections. I fix cars for a living. I live in a 1,200-square-foot house. Emma goes to public school." "Stop," Isabella said firmly. "You held Oliver for 30 seconds and calmed him when I'd been trying for 3 weeks. You tore up legal documents that would have made your life simpler because you wouldn't sign away your son. You're raising a little girl who makes welcome signs for strangers. That's what you offer, Oliver. That's what matters." "Your father won't stop," Ethan warned. "Then we fight him. Together." She paused. "I've already started proceedings to legally acknowledge you as Oliver's father. My lawyers filed yesterday." Ethan turned to stare at her. "Because Oliver deserves the truth. Because you deserve recognition. Because my father needs to know I'm serious." She met his gaze. "Because that night in Houston meant something, even if we never thought we'd be here." They swung gently, the chains creaking in rhythm with Oliver's breathing. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Emma asked if you were going to be Oliver's mommy forever, or just for a little while. What did you tell her?" "That some things are worth figuring out slowly." He looked at her. "Was I right?" Isabella reached over Oliver's carrier to touch Ethan's hand. "You were right. The custody hearing was scheduled for Tuesday morning in family court. Isabella had flown back to New York after the weekend in Texas, but they'd talked every night, Oliver between them on video calls while Emma showed the baby her drawings through the screen. The media had been relentless, but Isabella had hired the best PR firm to manage the narrative. Jonathan had tried everything. He'd threatened to remove Isabella from the company, but she'd called his bluff. She owned 51%, a gift from her late mother that her father couldn't touch. He'd tried to dig up dirt on Ethan, but there was none to find. The man worked, raised his daughter, and visited his wife's grave every Sunday. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse steps were packed with media. Isabella arrived in a simple blue dress, carrying Oliver. Ethan wore his only suit, Emma's hand in his. They met at the bottom of the steps. "Ready?" Ethan asked. "No," Isabella admitted. "You?" Terrified, he said, then smiled. "But we do it anyway, right?" "Right." They climbed the steps together, Emma between them, Oliver in Isabella's arms. The cameras flashed like lightning, but Emma just waved, making Isabella laugh despite everything. Inside the courtroom, Jonathan sat with his team of lawyers. Isabella's mother, Margaret, sat alone on the other side. A quiet show of support that meant everything. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes and steel-gray hair, reviewed the paperwork. "This is unusual," she began. "Miss Hartman, you're voluntarily acknowledging paternity and requesting joint custody arrangements?" "I am, Your Honor," Isabella said clearly. "Ethan Ford is Oliver's father. He deserves legal recognition of that fact. Mr. Ford, you're seeking joint custody? I'm seeking to be in my son's life, Your Honor. Whatever form that takes, that's best for Oliver." Jonathan's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we have concerns about Mr. Ford's fitness as a parent. His financial situation, the recent media attention affecting his daughter's schooling, all of which," Isabella's lawyer interrupted, "was caused by Mr. Hartman's decision to leak this story to the press." The judge raised her hand for silence. "Miss Hartman, I'd like to hear from you directly. Not your lawyers, not your father. You." Isabella stood, Oliver in her arms. "Your Honor, I spent 9 months preparing to raise Oliver alone. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. I didn't tell Ethan about the pregnancy because I was scared. Of judgment. Of complications. Of having to share control." She looked at Ethan. "But I was wrong. The moment Ethan held Oliver, I saw what my son was missing. Not money or resources or connections, but a father who would drive 14 hours just to see him, who would turn down millions rather than sign him away." "Mr. Ford," the judge prompted. Ethan stood slowly. "Your Honor, I'm not rich. I can't give Oliver the things Miss Hartman can, but I can give him what I give Emma every day. Time, attention, love, and the knowledge that he's wanted. I can teach him to throw a baseball and fix a car, and treat people with respect regardless of their bank accounts." Emma tugged on Ethan's jacket. "Can I say something?" The judge smiled. "Of course, sweetheart." Emma stood on her chair. "Oliver is my brother, and brothers should know their daddies. My daddy is the best daddy, even when he burns the pancakes. He reads stories with voices and lets me paint his nails sometimes." She looked at Isabella. "And Miss Isabella is nice. She makes Oliver happy. Maybe she could be his mommy and come visit lots so we can all be together." The courtroom was silent. Even Jonathan looked affected. The judge cleared her throat. "I've reviewed all the documents. It's clear to me that Oliver is fortunate to have 2 parents who want him so desperately." She looked at Jonathan. "Mr. Hartman, wealth doesn't make a parent." She turned to Isabella and Ethan. "I'm granting joint legal custody with a graduated visitation schedule. Mr. Ford, you'll have Oliver every other weekend initially, with expanded time as he gets older." In the hallway afterward, Jonathan approached Ethan. "You won," he said quietly. "Nobody won," Ethan replied. "We just got the chance to be Oliver's parents." Jonathan studied him, then said, "Perhaps Oliver is lucky to have you." 6 months passed in a rhythm of flights and phone calls. Ethan would fly to New York with Emma one weekend. Isabella would come to Texas the next. Oliver grew, laughing for the first time in Ethan's arms, rolling over on Isabella's office floor. The media eventually lost interest. Isabella discovered things about herself she'd never known. She could make macaroni and cheese from a box. She could sit through Disney movies. She could find joy in pushing Emma on a swing. Her penthouse gained color. Emma's drawings on the refrigerator, Oliver's toys scattered on designer rugs. Ethan discovered things too. He could navigate Manhattan. He could attend Isabella's company events without feeling out of place. His small house gained elegance. Fresh flowers Isabella brought, expensive coffee she'd taught him to appreciate. Emma thrived as a big sister, teaching Oliver important things like blowing raspberries. She'd started calling Isabella Bella and insisted on goodnight calls when apart. One evening in Texas, after the children were asleep, Isabella and Ethan sat on the porch swing that had become their thinking spot. "The board wants me to consider relocating," Isabella said quietly. "A Texas office. Austin's tech scene is growing." Ethan's swing stilled. And personally, it would mean Oliver could have both parents without constant travel. Emma could have stability. "We could see what this is. I can't ask you to change your life for me. You're not asking. I'm choosing." She turned to face him. "That night in Houston, you asked me what I wanted. I said something real. This is real, Ethan." Oliver's first birthday arrived on a perfect Texas spring day. The party was in Ethan's backyard. The guest list was small but meaningful. Ethan's family, Isabella's mother, and surprisingly, Jonathan. He'd arrived that morning carrying an enormous teddy bear. When Oliver reached for him, babbling gaga, Jonathan melted, spending the next hour on the floor playing peekaboo. Isabella had been living in Austin for 3 months. Her house was 10 minutes from Ethan's. She'd kept her New York penthouse, but rarely visited. The Texas office was thriving. They weren't living together officially, but there were toothbrushes in each other's bathrooms, migrating clothes, and Emma had her own room at Isabella's. As the party wound down, Emma helped Oliver blow out his single candle while everyone sang. The baby laughed and smashed his hand into the cake. Ethan found Isabella standing apart, watching with a soft smile. "You okay?" he asked. "Perfect," she said. "A year ago, I was terrified and alone. Now, look at us." Ethan pulled out a small box. "This isn't what you think. Just open it." Inside was a simple silver bracelet with 3 charms: E for Emma, O for Oliver, and an ampersand. "The ampersand is us," Ethan explained. "The connection between all the parts." Isabella's eyes filled. "It's perfect." Later, after guests had gone and children were bathed and asleep, Isabella and Ethan sat on the swing. "Move in," Ethan said suddenly. "You and Oliver. Move in here." "Ethan, I know we said we'd go slow, but you're here 5 nights a week anyway. Oliver's crib is in Emma's room half the time." He took her hands. "I'm not asking for more than we have, just asking for it to be official. Your house is too small for 4 people. Then we'll find a bigger one. Together." He squeezed her hands. "I care about not saying goodnight through a phone screen." Isabella was quiet then. "Okay. Okay? Okay. But we're getting a bigger house. And keeping my coffee maker." "Deal," Ethan said. "Any other conditions?" Isabella moved closer. "Just one. We stop pretending this is just about the children. I love you, Ethan." Ethan cupped her face gently. "I love you too." Have for months. 3 months later, they married on a hill overlooking Lake Travis. Emma wore white with an orange sash, Oliver's favorite color. Oliver toddled between his parents in a tiny suit. Isabella wore cream and the silver bracelet, now with additional charms. Ethan wore his good suit from the custody hearing. "We're already a family," Isabella had said when Ethan proposed, "but I want the world to know it." Standing under an oak tree with the lake sparkling below, they made simple vows. Ethan promised to always check if she was okay. Isabella promised to choose them every day. Emma interrupted the kiss to announce, "Now we're all Fords." Jonathan, who'd walked Isabella down the aisle, raised his champagne. To unexpected families and unconventional love stories. As the sun set, Ethan pulled Isabella aside while Emma taught Oliver to dance. "No regrets?" he asked. Isabella looked at their children, their families mingling. "Only one. I regret it took us 9 months to find each other again. We have the rest," Ethan said simply. The photographer captured them in that moment. Not posed or perfect, but real. A CEO who'd learned that power meant nothing without purpose. A mechanic who'd learned that broken didn't mean unfixable. A little girl who'd gained a mother. A baby who would grow up knowing he was worth fighting for. The caption Isabella would later post was simple: "Family, assembled with love, not instructions." But that would come later. For now, they danced on a hill in Texas. 4 people who'd become one family, proving that sometimes the best things in life came from moments you thought you'd forget but never really could.